Okay, I want to talk about a few things you'll want to know for writing your case report on Anna Garcia. So first of all, I just want to look at the actual instructions on the 1.26 case closed assignment. Here is a link to the video that you're watching right now. There are a bunch of resources I want to talk about a little bit, but first let's look at the actual assignment because I got some important information for you there. So first of all, in the past, as in last year, I, for some reason, had a big problem with people just copying their partner's papers. This is an individual assignment. I had to give out like over 30 zeros initially last year because of plagiarism problems. So make sure that you are writing your own paper. You cannot be copying material from other people. If somebody asks you to send your paper to them so that they can look at it, tell them no, okay? I had that happen a lot where people would say, hey, I'm writing my paper, can I see yours? They would share it with them on Google Drive, and then they would be utterly betrayed by their friends who would just copy their paper, and then we would have to have a meeting, and people would get zeros, and people would be sad, and people would cry, and we don't want to do that, okay? So write your own paper. To help keep you honest, you need to write your paper in Google Docs. You need to share your Google Doc with me. You need to make me an editor. So in your Google Doc assignment, go up to that top right share setting. Make sure that you put in my name, Nathan Hartman, or if you're in Mrs. Heidenreich's class, Kelly.Heidenreich, and share that information with your teacher, okay? Make your teacher an editor so they can see your sharing settings. If you do not make me an editor, I am not going to grade your paper. Okay, it has to be there so I can see that you wrote your own paper. You didn't copy and paste giant chunks off of a friend or ChatGPT or something. Speaking of ChatGPT, you may not use artificial intelligence tools for any original writing. You can use AI tools responsibly for this paper to help you maybe brainstorm, organize ideas, check it for errors. You could take your paper and say, hey, ChatGPT or other AI thing, can you look this over for any spelling errors or grammatical errors, or maybe help me rephrase something? That sort of use is fine, but you need to be the person writing the information. There's really not that much original writing in this paper, so it shouldn't be too daunting, but you're welcome to use AI to assist you in some ways, but it can't be writing your paper for you. If you do use AI, you need to include a disclosure statement like at the end of your paper, where you say like AI disclosure statement, artificial intelligence tools, including, and then name whatever those tools were, ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, whatever it is, right? And then XYZ, whatever you used it for. You're welcome to use it for those sorts of tasks, but you cannot use it to write your paper. Your paper should be completed in APA style. I'll show you an example of what that looks like. There's also a link here to the Purdue OWL APA guide and sample papers to help you with that. Before we take a look at those, though, some additional advice for you. For the timeline, it could just be a shortened version of the timeline that you have from before, and make sure to include any other important information that we've learned about Anna's situation since then. So, for example, an important thing you definitely should have on your timeline of events is Anna's estimated time of death, okay? When you originally made your timeline based on the digital evidence, you didn't know her estimated time of death because we hadn't done the autopsy. We hadn't done the 1.2.2 time of death stuff. You hadn't looked at her temperature, that kind of thing, but now you do. So you really need to make sure you have that on your timeline. I am going to be looking for that. Make sure that you use your resources. Look back at old activities to help you with anything you have questions over as you're writing things. Then finally, you're going to write your abstract last. So part of APA style is you're going to have an abstract. It's going to be the first thing on your paper. It's actually after the title page. The abstract page is the next page. Even though it's the first thing, though, you should write it last because it's basically a summary of your entire paper. So it's going to be hard to write if you haven't written your paper yet. So just make sure that you write that last. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit. All right, so first of all, going back to the project checklist, which you should have already seen before you watched this video, you should have already checked this out. These are the things that you are required to have in your report, right? So you should have a cover page. This should have your name, date, and the case name. There's some other things that APA requires as well. You'll have your abstract. This is on its own separate page. This should be page 2. And then starting on page 3, you're going to have the evidence. And so this is where your evidence summary table that you already completed for 1.1.7, you can just copy and paste that table straight in. You might have to change like some formatting stuff with it a little bit, and make sure the columns and the rows and everything is readable. Let me know if you need help with that. If you need any sort of like computer technical help, I can help you. But you should just be able to copy and paste that table straight into your paper. And then you're just going to write a summary paragraph, just summarizing what you learned from that part, from like the lesson 1.1 stuff, right? So that's your evidence analysis. Then you're going to include your completed autopsy report. The easiest way to do this, if you've done your autopsy report on paper, is to scan and email it to yourself. In my back room, I have a scanner, and I can show you how to use that, and we can input your email, and we can scan and email you JPEG image files that you can just insert into your paper really nice and easy. Then you're going to have that timeline. Like I said, that timeline, it can be an abbreviated timeline. Do need to make sure you include important events like, when was Anna injured, for example? When did Anna actually die, or estimated time of death? When did Taylor Diaz call 911, right? Those would be like 3 key things that you definitely should have. And then other important events that are relevant to your case, you want to include those as well. But those are 3 kind of like minimums that I'm looking for. And then finally, you're writing conclusions and recommendations. This is where you are kind of pulling from your autopsy report that last couple of sections, like the case summary and the cause of death section. This is where you are going to essentially make your claim about what was Anna's cause of death. You're going to clarify which legal manner of death that is, right? Is it natural, accidental, homicide, suicide, or undetermined? You should be able to determine it, though. And then what was the mechanism of death, right? Give me some information. You might have to do some research for this. You might have to do some research. Maybe you need to pull in an outside source or something like that and list that in your works cited. For the most part, if you're doing anything from any information you're pulling in from any of our activities or from MyPLTW, you don't need to include that in like a works cited. But if you do any external research, which you might need to do for the mechanism of death here, then you will want to make sure that you cite whatever source you were using to learn about, okay, how does this cause of death lead to death, right? What is actually going on in the body, right? What's physiologically occurring for that mechanism of death, right? And then you're going to also make recommendations. This is important. This is on the rubric. Make recommendations regarding next steps for law enforcement. I'll say that it's common that students will just forget to do this part, okay? Make sure you look at your project checklist, look it over before you turn in your paper. Do you have all of these bullet points? If you do, you'll probably get a pretty decent grade on this paper, okay? So make sure that we're including all that. All right, a few things that were linked that I want to just show you real quick. For APA format, the Purdue Online Writing Lab is a great resource for learning about APA style. And so I've got that linked here. There's a bunch of information. There's little menu items here to help you with that stuff. But it basically will tell you about the different sections of your paper, what they should look like. There's some examples of what those look like. Do note that you can follow the instructions for the student APA page, okay? There's also sections for professional. You're not a professional, you're a student. Follow the student instructions. And then there are also some sample papers. You can check those out. There's a bunch of them linked here. You can take a look at those. And then there's also some information from PLTW about technical writing. Not a bad idea to check this over and just read through it at some point if you have any if you're looking for further advice about how to write your paper. I do also have an example that I want to show you. This is one that got an A+ last year. So I want to just kind of briefly show that to you. It's not going to be on screen very long because I don't want you to copy what this kid did. Also note that Anna's cause of death is different this year. It's not going to necessarily be the same, or it could be. If you're watching this multiple years in a row, it could be the same, but it's also possibly different, so don't think that this is the right answer. Just want to show you the overall format so you know what I'm looking for. So this is that APA style title page, right? And then here we have the abstract, right? Nice, decent length paragraph. It's almost half of a page. It's on its own page. That's the abstract page. Then we move on to evidence analyzed. We can see that evidence summary table copied from 1.1.7. Then at the end of it, we have a nice paragraph here, just summarizing the evidence and what it was told. And then we have an autopsy report. This student actually did it digitally and then just inserted screenshots of the digital autopsy report. Once again, if you did it on paper, we can scan it in. You'll insert those pages from your autopsy report for Anna. Then we have a timeline. Once again, not that many bullet points. If you've got if this takes up a whole page and a half, you put too many things in. Keep it limited to the most important events. Then you have conclusions and recommendations, is where evidence is being cited to support a determined cause, manner, and mechanism of death. So that's what that should look like. You see that there are page numbers and that sort of thing. That's what I'm looking for. This one was a great one. Got a 25 out of 25, 100% last year. All right, so don't forget about all the resources that are linked in here. Make sure that you're writing in Google Docs. Don't forget, you can see the rubric on Canvas here too, so you can see all the different things that I'm looking for. So all the different categories here. Make sure before you turn it in, look over the rubric, look at your paper, say, hey, am I going to get a good grade on this? Because this is a 25-point test grade. It goes in the assessment category. It's not worth as much as an exam. It's worth like a third of an exam, but still, it goes in the exam category. So if you did not do well in that first exam in lesson 1.1, this is a great way for you to bring your grade up. Of course, as you're working, just let me know if you need any help or have any questions, and I will help you out.